We all know that for the first 40 years or so, narrative motion pictures have been shot in black and white, but now, and for the past 80 years, we've been able to shoot in colour, and for the past 60 years it's been pretty widely available. So why do filmmakers still choose to shoot their films in black and white? Well, it's actually for a number of reasons. In today's video, I'm going to be covering the different uses of black and white in the modern age, why you should use it on your next project, so long as it's right for the story, and some of my favourite inspiration for black and white cinematography. So today we really only see black and white in two scenarios. The first being the filmmakers wanted the film to be in black and white, so they shot it in black and white, for example The Lighthouse, and the second is the filmmakers who wanted the film to be in black and white. However, the studio said no, so they had to release it in colour and later release it in black and white as an alternate version, for example Nightmare Alley. Whereas back in the day, it was really either the production could afford to shoot in colour or it couldn't. Of course, story and themes came into play, but that's the basic idea. Then we have the use of it in different genres, with the most popular use of it obviously being for thrillers and horrors, but then we have films like Francis Ha and Dead Man, which are dramas, and if we listen to an interview from Baumbach on why he chose to shoot it in black and white,
I think intuitively with the black and white and the music, I had this feeling that we would kind of celebrate the kind of romance and the energy and the spirit of New York City and being young and how good that can feel.
we can see that it usually isn't just a stylistic choice, but it's often a thematic one. Now, considering the demographics of this channel, I'm going to assume most of you are newer filmmakers and are either just learning the ropes of filmmaking or only have a few years experience. So this means you can pretty much do anything, and unlike 20 to 30 years ago, we really don't have to worry about the price of colour film if we want to make a short, as if it came down to it, we could just use our phones. And this lets us freely experiment without having the burden of a huge budget on our shoulders. Before I start talking about why you should use this in your next film, I just want to make it clear that it isn't some sort of cheat code to not grading your footage. Sure, it can be simpler, especially when just starting out, but I don't want you to look at it as something you can just throw on at the last minute, because it really isn't that. Anyway, the main reason I think you should be shooting at least one of your projects in black and white this year is because it restricts you. We don't have colour to rely on to make our image look interesting. We have to use light, unique compositions, if it warrants it, some sort of movement. I feel like you really have to think outside the box when it comes to it, especially if you aren't trying to reference other films. Now, on the lighting note, I find it's best to use some sort of haze or smoke, especially if you are on a budget of sorts, because it's a quick way to create depth in your image without having to really do much. Of course, you need to shape the light in a way so you aren't just filling a bright room with light, but with a couple of flags and diffusers, that's easy enough. So my favourite kind of black and white cinematography is that of film noir, because not only does it create a mysterious mood, but it's also just really interesting to watch. The sharp shadows, bright lighting, strong silhouettes, it almost makes you feel as though you are watching a play, but you have that extra slice of creativity from the compositions and movement. But the other reason is that, when used properly, it really stands out, and whilst I know it's almost a gimmick at this point to use it, you can still use it properly. For example, if the film has a bleak subject matter, or maybe you're just going after that 50s noir look, or maybe you just feel as though the story can't be told any other way. I think overall it will just end up making you a better cinematographer. You'll feel out of your comfort zone, but you will learn to adapt. I just plead with you, don't do it just because you can. When I look for inspiration for an upcoming project, I try and stay away from taking direct inspiration from other films as much as possible. Of course, I scroll through shot deck and create mood boards for the director, but I really like to think of those as more sparking a light for future ideas, and sorry if that sounded really pretentious. However, I do think it's important to look at least a few in detail. Anyway, starting off with a couple of modern titles I think you should watch, we of course have The Lighthouse, shot by the incredible Darren Blaschke. Now, I like to look at this film as an example of how raw cinematography should be, but it just so happens to have no colour. Blaschke in fact utilised strong keys, deep shadows and unique compositions to create the world of the lighthouse. He also used an aspect ratio that we rarely see, 1.19:1, and as far as modern black and white films go, I don't think you can top it. Now, for a much more upbeat use of black and white photography, we have Francis Ha, where it's used more to allow us to focus on the characters and the surroundings. The shadows aren't as deep, the overall film is a bit more faded, but this all plays into the story. This isn't a dark film. Sure, it isn't always happy, but then there would be no drama. Now, I'd recommend this film anyway, but especially so if you are into shooting dramas, as I truly can't think of another film as fun as this, shot in recent years, that's also in black and white. I couldn't not mention Fellini's 8½, as not only does it have some of the most stunning locations and creative compositions I've ever seen in a film, but also the way they played with light and silhouettes just blew me away when I first watched it. If you are looking for inspiration on ways to creatively use light, I really don't think you need to look any further, as this is quite literally the perfect example. It's pretty hard to get more restricted than black and white cinematography, so why not set the film all in one room? Well, that's what happens on 12 Angry Men, and whilst the lighting is pretty high key throughout, the use of composition more than makes up for it. So if that's what you're stumped on, you really can't go wrong with giving this a watch. And even if you're not, just give it a watch anyway. It's 90 minutes long and one of the best films of all time. So will you shoot your next film in black and white? Because there are so many different reasons to do so, and luckily at this level you have a lot more creative control over the image, so as long as it's right for the story, why not give it a try? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. You know what to do if you did. If you have a recommendation for an analysis, leave it down below. Thank you so much for watching and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!